guys, Sara Partee, and I am going to talk to you guys about my SDC and just kind of give you an overview of what went into this action research project. So the first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to kind of do a brief introduction about why exactly I chose this, and then we'll go into the actual study itself and the collection of the data. And finally, we'll do some reflection, and I'll give you the data that I got and kind of talk about what it means for me specifically, how I'll continue my teaching, because this was something that I really actually wanted to talk about and do to improve my own teaching, not just for the class. So I teach pre-calculus and algebra 2, accelerated pre-cal and algebra 2, at a urban high school. It is a Title I school. So while I am well aware that we struggle in school with motivation, period, I tend to find that my students really, really have an issue with motivation, and part of it is it's just not as they're not brought up all the time to really value education, and so a lot of my students see school as just somewhere you have to go sit for 7 hours a day and get bothered by people. And so their motivation towards their actual education and towards the schoolwork is really lacking, and it tends to be a pretty big struggle. So I wanted to I've been interested in this anyway. When we were assigned this project, I had gone in to my my portal is what we call it for Gwinnett County, and was looking at some professional developments because we have to have a minimum number of hours. And one of the ones I found that I was really interested in was motivational techniques in the math classroom, and specifically gifted students. And I am in this program working towards, or have just finished, my gifted endorsement. So that's really where I'm going. I'm going specifically into working on Move On and Ready psychology. I'm kind of getting out of the math realm a little bit, working on Move On and Ready. And so I felt that motivation was a huge, huge thing. And specifically with gifted students, I had the ability to really work with a whole lot of gifted students this year, being that I've gone into accelerated pre-cal. And then I coach, and many of our students are gifted that ended up swimming for us. And just to kind of see the complacency was really disturbing to me. I grew up in the gifted and AP sector, and so to kind of see the difference that's happened even just in about the 10 years that since I've graduated high school, it's really, really concerning to me. And I feel that it's probably one of the biggest things. I feel like we can solve a lot of the issues that we're having if we can just find a way to motivate our students. And with our gifted students specifically, they've got the means, they've got the ability. It's about making them want to do it. So I really was interested, and it kind of all came together when I saw that professional development was going on. I really thought that this was going to be a great spot to kind of hone in on my action research. Okay, so how did I kind of get started with this? So the process that I took was, obviously, I was not going to just randomly start with what I thought would be in the professional development class. I went through the professional development class, and it was a 3-day course spread out over a couple weeks, and took what I learned in this course and the motivational techniques that I learned in this course and went to my lesson plans that were already produced. We have to have these turned in by a certain time to our administration. So I was already done with them. I knew what I was going to be teaching, but kind of went back into my lesson plans and took motivational techniques from the professional development class and just went into my lessons and started adding them in places. So I would pick something that I was going to do whole group, and I would differentiate it a little bit more, and really hone in on gearing my gifted students into some kind of assignment that just incorporated a little bit more of motivation for them based on the methods that I had learned. So once those were done, I went into actually measuring a before measurement. So I took a couple of measurements here. I wanted one qualitative and one quantitative, really. But what ended up happening was I had a quantitative of summative assessment scores, and I did 2 different ones. Technically, even though quizzes are formative assessments for us, I went ahead and said that it was sum and assessment just because I wanted a little bit more of a longer timeline for this study, and so I wanted multiple assessment scores for this. So I have both a mid-unit quiz score and a mid-unit, or unit test, so the end of unit test. And I took both of those class averages. I worked with 3 different classes, one of which was a mixed gifted and college prep course that didn't have a whole lot of gifted students in it. Another one was a mixed class that had quite a bit more gifted students in it. And then the last one was an accelerated pre-cal class that's mostly of gifted students. So I was looking at specifically how these work with gifted students, but I also kind of went in and did them with regular ed students as well, because I figure if it's good for gifted, it's good for outside of gifted as well. So I took those control measures, and I also provided my students with the survey that you see. This one specifically was my post-survey, but my pre-survey almost looked exactly the same. And I wanted them to rank themselves before I even started anything, because I'm well aware that some of my students already have these motivational, they don't have motivational issues. They come in, they do what they need to do. So I wanted to have kind of a control, a pre-score, and then the post-score to actually see a difference. So I provided those scores later in this presentation of how they rank themselves before any kind of motivational techniques that I learned from the professional development class were implemented. And then I actually went there and I incorporated my motivational techniques into my lesson plan. So this is where I actually taught the material. The mid-unit quizzes and the summative assessments from before the motivational techniques were actually the unit prior. So I'm aware that that's a little bit of a confounding variable there, that you could have had students more motivated because the material was easier or it was different material or whatever. But that was really my way of gauging motivation specific. So then, of course, I took a post-assessment, so grade analysis of the summative assessments, meaning the quizzes and the units, and I saw the rise in both, how much higher did we get, what were our actual numbers, and again, those are all incorporated later. And then I did a post-motivation survey. So I gave them this exact same ranking scale again and asked them to motivate or to rank themselves again. They were unaware that I was working on incorporating motivational techniques that I had learned. They were unaware that I had done this professional development class. I really wanted this to not influence them. They were well aware that I was doing something because I don't typically hand my students motivational surveys. But I really wanted them to be as honest as they could be, and I didn't want them to know what I was really trying to look at. It wasn't until after they filled out this post-survey that I actually explained what was going on, and a lot of them were really excited to kind of be presented on. So understand that my students now think that you are their fans and you are their audience, so they're pretty excited. The results that I got, so I've got obviously the pre-implementation scores from before I taught the lesson with the motivation techniques, and then the post-implementation scores. Class 1 is my Algebra 2 class where many of them are gifted. Class 2, and I call this my control class, meaning it didn't have a whole lot of gifted students in it, so it was a little bit different because I was looking at mostly what these were working on or what these look like on a regular ed class and if they worked the same, because these motivational techniques were specific to gifted students. However, I felt that they should be able to work with regular ed students as well. But they were a little bit elevated thinking, so I wanted to see what they would do with regular ed students to see if they were really going to work well specifically for gifted. And then class 3 was my accelerated pre-cal class, which is smaller and is almost all gifted students because it is accelerated. So the the top row talks about the summative assessment scores, and these are class averages. The first number is the mid-unit quiz class average, and the second number is the unit test class average. So you can see for pre-implementation for my, mostly for my Algebra 2 class that it has a good number of gifted students, we went up. So our quiz grade average was a 75, and unit was an 81. Post-implementation, the quiz went up by 4 points, and the unit test also went up by 4 points. So they were not an excessive gain, but still a gain. Class 2, which was, there's very few gifted students in the class. There's another Algebra 2 class. This is not as high performing of a class. So their quiz average pre-implementation was 68, and unit was a 65. After implementation, it did go up a little bit. It went up about 5 points. And then the unit test went up a good bit. I was pretty surprised with this. And I think it really, some of the techniques worked really well, not necessarily with this class getting them to think on a higher level the way I was looking for with my my mostly gifted classes, but I think it really got them to pay attention well and be able to relate the things a little bit better to score higher. My third class, my accelerated pre-calc class, started with a 76 and an 83. It went up to a 78 and an 87, so not as big of a jump in this class. However, these are mostly gifted students that were working pretty well anyway. So I wasn't, it would have been hard for them to jump up a whole lot as far as these scores go. This is a difficult class. So you can't necessarily compare the Algebra 2 class with the pre-calc classes where we're much higher level, obviously. But the real one that I like to look at was this motivational survey average. Every class ranked themselves higher after these motivational techniques were implemented into the lesson. So I really, really was excited with that. I felt that they were happier, that they felt better, and that they weren't trying to fight it as much, which was really nice. That is it. I'm excited to give a little bit more information when I do my recording for the actual research study. So y'all go ahead and you can go evaluate it. Thanks.